Hi, in this video I have this Alba gas stove with electric oven, and what happens is when I set it to have the top element on, it's not getting hot on the top. Now one may think that this is just the element, but in this case it's actually the selector switch. So in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to change the selector switch, also how to know that it is the selector switch, and I'll also show how to measure the element to eliminate that as the problem. So in most circumstances, it would be the element, and I'm going to quickly show you how to fault trace the element, and thereafter I will demonstrate how to replace the selector switch. Alright, so I've removed the screws on the sides, and then I can remove this cover. Alright, so here's the element. It's a double element, which means there's two windings. Now there is the one element, the outer side, and then there is the other element, the inner side. So that means that between there and there should be maybe 20 or so ohms, and then between there and there should be also about 20 or so ohms. So that means I do need a multimeter, and I'm going to unplug this. Now remember, the power is currently off. These are offline measurements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these two over here. Those are the outer two, and I'm going to take a measurement. I'm going to set this to resistance, and I'm going to use my leads, and there we can see 29.6 ohms. So that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Now I'm going to close that, and I'm going to take a measurement of the inner element. So I only need to remove the one, and when I measure it, there we can see 20.5 ohms. The element isn't tripping the mains. I'm not worried about an insulation breakdown. What I'm checking is that the element still is a closed circuit. Now in this case, it's a closed circuit, so there's nothing wrong with the element, yet it's not getting hot. And that is why I'm saying it's the selector switch. So this is what the selector switch looks like, and this selector switch controls when the element goes on and off. So now I'm going to show you how to get to the selector switch. Right, I'm here at the front, and this is the selector switch, and that's what it looks like inside. So what I need to do is I need to get to that selector switch. So I need to remove the top cover here. Right, so I've removed all the plates. Now what I need to do is remove these screws all along here. So there's little screws here. Right, so this can almost come off. It's just that there's a fastening screw here and one on the other side, which needs to be removed. Right, so there's two screws here. And now I can peel this up. I'm just gripping it like that, straight up. Right, over here we have the selector switch. And I'm going to now turn on the mains just to demonstrate the problem. Right, I've set the selector switch so that the top element should be on. And what I noticed is this terminal here at the back seems to be loose. There, it's tight. I don't know if you can see, it's actually a bit burned, and I can hear it arcing. So if I come from this angle, you can see how it has this free play. And I can see inside there's an arc. So it's like it needs to be held back. There's an arc over there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you that the problem is here and not the element. I'm going to go and take a voltage measurement at the element just for demonstration purposes. My meter is set to voltage. The element should be on. Notice I'm taking a measurement across the element and it just says 0.026. So no current is flowing through here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wiggle that terminal. I'm going to hold it closed. Right, so now we're going to push it to the side and make the contact on the broken terminal. Push it. Now there's the voltage present across the element, which means that current is now flowing through that element. Look at the voltage, 230 volts, which is the supply voltage. If we release the terminal, now we've released the pressure on there, we can see that the element is no longer getting the current. Right, now I need to replace the old one or the new one. Unfortunately, I need to get this face plate off, which means I need to remove all these knobs. So some you might find are very sticky. This one is quite easy. I just removed it like that. I take a balance force and I remove them. You see my fingers go in between. If it's very difficult to remove this, you can take pry tools and go from each side and lift this up. So I'm still taking a balance force, but the difference is now I'm going to wedge it. So I'm actually pulling it away. If you haven't got pry tools, you can also use two screwdrivers. Just be careful not to scratch the face plate. Sometimes easier to wrap the screwdriver in a little cloth, and then now what I can do is I can now remove this. Right, on this unit, there's a couple of screws here on the top. Right, I've removed the 5 screws on the top, and there's a few underneath here I need to just remove. Right, so I've removed 1, 2, and 3. Now on this unit there is illumination here and it's panel mounted, so I've got to be careful when I pull this cover off because there are going to be some illumination wires. Right, so I just unplugged these globes by just pulling backwards. Right, here's the replacement, but what I need to do is make sure that I know the pinouts here. So what I've got to do is I've got to take a photo of it. So at this point, take a photo or a little video of all the wires so you know which wire goes where. And in this case, you might even find there are 3 white wires all over there. Now, just taking a photo is not going to solve that because you don't know which wire goes where. So you might even want to put some insulation tape and label these 1, 2, 3. There's another 2 other white wires over here. So this can get quite confusing. So don't remove this until you're 100% sure you know which wires will go where. Right, now that I'm sure I know the wiring layout, I can just remove these 2 screws. Right, now the first thing that I do is I just make sure that it is exactly the right unit. I'm checking the pinouts and they're all correct. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to first start on this side and I'm going to transpose these wires to the side. Right, on these terminals there are holes. There is a little pin that goes into the hole. So that means that in order for me to get this off, I need to release that little pin. There's the little pin that needs to be depressed inwards. When I depress that back, then I can remove the terminal. So I am going to be doing that on each one, starting with the black one over here. What I do to make this easier so I don't make any mistakes is I call out the number. This is 10A, and then I see 10A. A pair of long nose pliers, also very helpful because I clamp that and pull at the same time. Right, I've now connected the wires to the new one. I'm now just pressing them in and checking that they're all firmly in place. Now I just need to reinstall this one. Right, so I'm just returning the cover. Just plug in these globes. Right, so when returning the knobs, you might find that they're a little bit different. The one that's got a steel part are the ones for this side. So what I do, the flat part there must align with the flat part there. Right, so I can now turn on the unit and then I adjust the temperature. And just to show you at the back, when I measure across there, notice the voltage 229. Voltage is now present here at the terminals and the selector switch is now operational. Right, and the middle one is for the grill, and there you can see the middle one is giving the voltage, the supply voltage of 230 volts. Right, just make sure these are all returned properly. Right, so just having a look here, you can see how discolored this is. And notice how this terminal is loose. This has heated up and it is no longer sitting and mating with the switch correctly. And that is why it wasn't working. That's why when I pushed it like this, it would work, and then when I released it, it separated from the terminals. If you're wondering why this is burnt out in the first place, it's because of the nature of how this is used. For example, if I want to do grill, I must select grill first, then select the temperature. But unfortunately, what people do is they might just select grill, do the temperature, and then move this around while the temperature is already on to a high level. And what that does is it forces a high current between the terminals, and that can actually damage the terminals. So what we're supposed to do is always select the function and then do the temperature. And then when you're done, reduce the temperature to 0 and then rotate this multifunction switch. Thanks for watching and cheers.